Hi, thanks for tuning in to another edition of 30 Minutes With. My name is Mike Dobbs. Behind me, you probably see, over my shoulder here, Mike Cass, the eraser. He's the guy who's the graffiti remediation expert for the city of Springfield. Now, why is Mike Cass up here on Court Square? Well, that's a good question. And my producer and director, Steve Carey's got the answer in his segment all about John Simpson, the artist behind these murals, the creative process, and why John is doing it.
Does it freeze?
It's close to freezing. It's probably not, the smartest thing for a painter to do this, but it's not the stupidest thing either. So, well, this all started with Evan Plotkin's Jazz Festival. It was in the middle of August, and we wound up getting permission from the city and the redevelopment authority through the eraser.
I decided I would ask the city if we could paint a few of the storefronts in the area where the Jazz Festival was taking place on the Court Street side. And that's how I met Mike Cass.
I'm Mike Cass, aka the Eraser. John Simpson, the resident artist for the city.
Mike was great about giving us access to the building so John could store his paint and make it more accessible for the artists to work.
The first murals were of the artists that were performing at the concert. Phil Woods, who got the key in the city, great saxophone player, Charlie Neville. So John started with that concept.
That led to what we have today, and it became sort of this passion of John's to keep it going. So after the Jazz Festival, it was amazing just for the Jazz Festival.
And then they wound up posing with the pictures, like pointing their fingers, touching the painted finger, and that added another dimension to it. And hearing the music playing while painting the horns and stuff added another dimension to it. And I just remember feeling like this is like a peak experience when I was painting Louis Armstrong's trumpet, and I could hear the trumpet on stage right behind me.
All of these artists are all on the murals in the front of the building, and it was kind of to memorialize this great musical event. And then it just kind of morphed from there. It became something, that no one anticipated. As far as public art, I've been involved with that for the past 8 or 9 years, doing different projects, including the sneaker project that I did downtown with some other folks. And then I got James Kitchen to come downtown and opened up a gallery at 1550 Main Street and did a public art campaign with him downtown, which is still still here, which is great.
I've been doing this for 10 years. I'm the graffiti remediator. I've been taking all the bad stuff off the buildings, and I only use 2 or 3 colors. I use gray, and I use brown, and I use beige. And I'm getting too old for that. This is a whirlwind working with this artist guy that has all these colors going. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So we're gonna paint the town. Right, John?
Not just red.
With the approval of the city and Mike Cass's help and my encouragement, and we decided that we would keep this whole thing going, and John was great he was just enjoying it and loving the feedback that we're getting.
The public responded so quickly and intensely to every image that went up, I couldn't stop. And I'm still going to go in on him a little more analysis and get to draw with highlights and a little crisper. I feel like the human face is so important. I've painted different things for years, abstracts and all sorts of stuff, but there's so much in a person's face. Dorothy looks a little wicked, and the Cowardly Lion has a sleepy eye. But the eraser was saying that to me, and I said, well, I have a sleepy eye, so I think it's all right. To some extent, it's fun working in the different elements. It keeps it kind of fresh.
I'll bet.
Different sensations, and see if the cold bothers you or not. By the time I finish, I got to get her teeth right. That's always very important. Try and make Judy look a little more sane here. And I found out by painting these up large that people respond to them like nothing else. If I was just doing my own abstract art, they'd say, what is it? Or that's art and I don't get it. This, everybody gets it immediately, and they have their own feelings about it, and memories, and thoughts, and suggestions for who to paint next. And that's part of it too, is the public making suggestions. A lot of the faces on the wall were suggested by strangers who came up and said they really wanted to see it. Well, I like this, I've enjoyed this more than any other public art project I've worked on, because being right out on State Street here, and everybody comes up to me and it's people I don't know, so nobody has any preconceptions about our relationship or anything, so they say what they feel. But there's something that's, that I like about working in public, and from kind of the way Dorothy looks right now here, it's like you have to work fast, because you don't want to leave something looking really strange, like overnight or for any long duration.
And it's really been a lot of visionary work, I guess, you know, with a few people who believe in this kind of idea, and we've been able to put it into life.
And it's made so I don't want to stop painting, because they're so thankful, and they're thankful in the name of Springfield. And it makes me really happy, and it makes me happy that Springfield, we all feel like perceptions are changing.
The naysayers of Springfield have not really been lifting it up, and they've kind of abandoned the city and have walked away from it. And State Street side mural is dedicated to them. And the life that you see behind us is quite a miraculous thing. It's a fabulous representation of what can happen downtown. And we have plans to just like keep this thing going. This is not going to stop here by any means, you know.
Well, I'm waiting for John Simpson to want to put me up here on the Court Square building as well. I don't know if it's going to happen at any time soon, but I can live with my inadequacies. I also live with the fact that I'm a movie guy through and through, and few phrases excite me and other movie enthusiasts more than the phrase, a lost film. Now, usually, a lost film means a motion picture that's been made, distributed, seen by audiences, and then somehow has fallen through the cracks when it comes to preservation. Well, what about a movie that was made, intended to be seen, and never made it to those audiences? And that's the story that my friend Marty Langford, who teaches film and video production at American International College, has undertaken in his new documentary called Doomed. It's all about a Fantastic Four movie that you probably never even heard of. It was made in 1994, and Marty sat down to explain why he tackled this fascinating mystery. Hi, my name is Mike Dobbs. This is 30 Minutes With, and today's guest is a good friend of mine who is enjoying some great national acclaim for his new documentary. Marty Langford, who's a Springfield filmmaker, along with Mark Sykes, who's a former Springfield guy, have produced a wonderful documentary about one of the great Hollywood mysteries, which is why a film based on the Fantastic Four comic book that was made in the mid-1990s disappeared and was never released. Now, years later, we have a new Fantastic Four movie in the theaters. People are very interested in it, but they're also more interested almost in the story that Marty and his partner Mark Sykes have put together in this great documentary called Doomed. So Marty, thanks a lot for doing this. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. You kidding me?
So let's talk a little bit about how you came to this project. Mm-hmm. And just so folks know, Marty teaches at American International College. He teaches film. This is not his first rodeo in terms of filmmaking. He's been involved with a couple feature films in various capacities, as well as a lot of shorts and the types of things that every filmmaker does, basically.
Good, going on 20 years now, goodness, yeah.
So how did Doomed come about?
Mark Sykes, my executive producer, who I kind of grew up with in Springfield, I worked at his dad's comic book shop, so we were both comic book geeks. In the early 90s, Mark moved out to LA and ended up interning for Roger Corman. So Mark was actually there when they made this movie, and you know, we'd talk to each other every so often. This was before the internet, at least before it was so big, and it just became this incredibly interesting story about this new Fantastic Four movie that was coming out, and he was there and he's on set and he's telling me all these cool things, and that was kind of my connection to Mark through the movie. And then of course I'm a comic book guy, so I love this stuff. And it just became this legendary lost film about what happened to it. And Mark knew some of the story, but not all of it. And I knew some of the story, but not all of it, whatever was kind of out there and published. And a couple of years ago, I figured, unless I do something, I don't think I'm going to get to the bottom of this, because I'd been waiting for a book to come out or waiting for a documentary to come out to find out the story. And I figured, what the heck, I'm going to do it myself. So I was going to write a book. I contacted Mark, who's a casting director now in Hollywood. So he has all these connections with actors, including the actors that were in the original film. he was interested and he wanted to work with me, but he's like, you know, Marty, you're a filmmaker. Why aren't you, you know, why don't you just make a documentary?
Sure.
And my initial concern was, well, it's illegal to watch this movie. You know, it was never released. A bootleg floated out, and it's out there. I mean, you can go to YouTube and you can watch it right now if you want. But it's not legally available to view or to watch anywhere. So we were, or I figured anyway, if we can't show footage from the movie legally, how can I make this a documentary? And at some point we were just like, well, you know what? Screw it. We're just gonna do it and see if anybody comes down on us. And you know, at each subsequent screening we've had, I kind of wait for, you know, Marvel to show up. When we were premiering at San Diego Comic-Con, I was actually not overly concerned, but I was like, there could be a guy with a briefcase and a suit up there saying, cease and desist. But he wasn't, and they weren't, and we've heard nothing from them. I kind of hope we don't, but it would be kind of fun if we did too, you know, the movie Marvel doesn't want you to see, cease and desist, all this cool, you know, PR that we could get from it. But ultimately, I just want the movie to be seen, so.
Let's tell people that you basically premiered the film at the San Diego Comic-Con, which has grown into being the biggest pop culture event in the United States.
Crazy, crazy scene.
So you have the attention at San Diego. You also, just within a period of a week when you were in Los Angeles, you were at the Screen Actors Guild Theater.
The SAG Foundation, which was beautiful.
You were at, the film just had another screening recently too.
We were at the Boston Comic Con a couple weeks ago. And in LA last Thursday was the kind of theatrical premiere where we actually had a paying audience there. Over 300 people. They had all of the actors and creators and crew from the original movie on a panel afterwards. Killed me not to be there. But it was a huge show, awesome time from what I hear and what I saw.
And this film has gained the attention of the Wall Street Journal, Esquire, Variety, Maxim. Those are the ones just I know off the top of my head. You've gotten a lot of press, and a lot of the press has focused on the fact that here's something that even if you're not a huge film fan or you're a huge comic book fan, everybody likes a mystery. And at the core of this is a German film producer who's now deceased, who had the rights to the Fantastic Four comic book and had to make a movie by a certain date in order to maintain those rights for the future.
Exactly.
And the film is made at Roger Corman's studio for how much money?
Between $1 million and $1.5 million. Constantine Films, the German company, put in half, and then Corman put in half. But Corman's came with kind of services, so he would rent out his studio for X number of dollars, but he owned it outright, so that was just kind of profit, you know? But yeah, I would say $1 million is probably the number, which is stupid low for, you know, a film like this.
So a director is assigned, there's a producer, there's a cast, there's special effects people, the whole 9 yards, who put together a film based on the Fantastic Four in what, how many days?
They shot it in 28 days.
28 days, which is, just so people know, $1 million in 1994 to make a movie in 28 days is not very much, especially for a film that has the capacity, the story has this capacity for special makeups, special effects. I mean, we're talking about Ben Grimm, The Thing, which has got this incredible costume. Dr. Doom is in an incredible costume. Then, you know, the easiest thing is, of course, the Invisible Girl, because she can become invisible. That's pretty easy. But Mr. Fantastic stretches, and the Human Torch lights on flame.
More or less.
And you've got, it must have been a huge challenge for these filmmakers to be able to tell this story in the best way they could within their time limit and their budget.
Right, and that was only kind of, that was almost the least of their worries, was doing this, because at the time that they were in post-production and editing, the push to produce this film and to make it kind of went away. And there was nobody kind of steering the ship at this point, because the German company, it turns out, was mostly only interested in maintaining this option. Corman, you know, shot the movie, he got paid, everybody got paid. It's not like anybody got completely ripped off, but it just languished in post-production, the film. So yeah, they were struggling to make these special effects of you know, Johnny Storm flaming on, and Sue Storm turning invisible, and especially the stretchy guy, Mr. Fantastic, with his, and the effects are kind of laughable, they really are. But while they were struggling with all these effects, they were also not being supported by the studio, by Corman, because they were just kind of, we did what we had to do, you know, we'll eventually release it, but it didn't seem to be on a very high priority because of all these kind of backdoor shenanigans that were going on with Constantine Films and 20th Century Fox and Marvel Comics and Roger being there, you know, just to produce the film.
Right. The interesting thing is that Corman's company produced movie posters, one sheets.
Yeah.
They cut a trailer, and they were putting that on. I know the VHS. We may need to explain to the kids what VHS was, but
are you going to say Carnosaur too?
Carnosaur, yeah.
Was it Carnosaur?
It was on Carnosaur, and that's where I first saw it, and I went, "Wow, this actually sort of looks cool."
Yeah.
You know.
And it's funny too, because that's the best, like the movie. That's the best it looks right now. You know, they actually did a process where they took the 35mm film that they shot and they ran it through a process to make it look really good, called a telecine, and then cut that trailer, you know, color quality, all the set, it was beautiful, which they never got to apply to the actual movie itself because it did just kind of languish, and then the turmoil that, that ended up running into when, you know, the movie got shelved.
And of course, all of this ultimately was an exercise for the German producer to maintain the rights. So down the road, they could go to 20th Century Fox and make those two Fantastic Four films.
Yep, which is exactly what they did, yeah.
That, you see, I'm a terrible sexist because I can't remember any of the cast except Jessica Alba.
I know, right?
In fact, I've seen that in print.
Michael Chiklis.
There we go, as Ben Grimm. I've seen that more times in print. The Jessica Alba Fantastic Four films.
Yeah, right, no, that's how we identify it, yeah.
Which were moderately successful at the box office, but weren't considered to be any great shakes, any groundbreaking kind of comic book drama movies.
Yeah, not at all. But they made hundreds of millions of dollars. And because of this Corman film back in '92, it worked. You know, the ploy kind of worked. They were able to maintain the option. So Constantine went on to produce and distribute the first two Fantastic Four movies, as well as the new one that just came out. You know, during the credits it says, you know, Constantine Films. If it wasn't for this, you know, little Corman movie, they would have lost those rights and they wouldn't have made these hundreds of millions of dollars.
So what's fascinating about your documentary is the reaction of the director and the cast to what happened. Because all these guys just thought, we're doing a job of work, we've been hired, we're going to do this, we're putting together this movie. And then they find out that basically the bottom has been drawn from beneath them.
Yes.
And their work is not going to be seen, at least not going to be seen legally.
Yeah.
It is perhaps one of the most accessible lost films.
It is, I know.
Ever in the history of cinema. And as you mentioned, you can go on YouTube and actually watch the entire thing if you want. But did you find that they were embittered by this? Were they is this something they're still upset about?
Yeah, I'd say mostly no. They're professional actors. They got through it. It was, you know, this little rocky road for a number of months in their early careers. But a couple of them too recognized that this could have been that breakout film, especially the director, Ole Sassoon. He put together a pretty good movie for very little money that was incredibly ambitious. So he did a nice job. And when the movie got shelved, the natural reaction and inclination for people to think is that, oh, it must suck so bad that it's unreleasable, which reflected badly on everybody that made it. So Ole went through, you know, years of, you must not be a very good director if this movie never came out. So it did harm his career. And Ole came up in the late 80s, early 90s with, like, he was a music video director. He did a bunch of Clapton stuff and really legit guy. And he came up with like David Fincher and Michael Bay, these directors who moved from the music video arena into feature films. Ole, of course, kind of didn't maintain their career, you know. Right. And this movie hurt him. You know, he still actively works. He's a director. He's got credits. But Ole got screwed. And when it comes to the cast, you know, there's this thing called residuals where, you know, they get paid each time that the movie gets shown somewhere, whether it's on TV or it gets released on DVD or Blu-ray or video on demand. So they never kind of saw those profits that, you know, when actors go into a movie production, they know, okay, if I'm getting, in this case, they got like $2,000 a week or something, whatever the SAG minimum was. They know that, okay, yeah, I'll get a check for $2,000, but in 6 months, when it gets released at the theaters, I get another check for $2,000. And when it comes out on home video, I get a check for $6,000. And when it gets released on cable, I get a check for $1,500. So they base their film choices on the property's potential to make money, you know, in the long run. Fantastic Four didn't have that, so they got paid their $2,000, but they got screwed in the long run.
Sure, sure.
And in terms of them kind of being bitter, I recognized when I was doing the edit that I wanted this documentary to kind of celebrate the movie. I didn't want kind of a gritty, you know, sad sob, edgy story about these broken people who never recovered from, and that actually wasn't the case, but there were a couple of them and elements of their lives where we touched on a nerve about how they really felt shafted with this movie. They thought it was going to be their big step into Hollywood, and it wasn't, and you know, it certainly didn't help their careers, and like I said with Oli, people just assumed it sucked, so it quite possibly hurt their careers.
Now, do you think that with your documentary, and it's going to be released so everybody can see it later this year, do you think that it may spur an official release of this 1994 Fantastic Four film?
Yeah, I mean, that wasn't the intent with the movie. I mean, I didn't make this movie for that to happen.
Right.
But if it were to happen, because like you had said, we've got a lot of cool coverage and PR from all over the place, all over the world. I've done, I don't know how many interviews and magazine stories, and our trailer, you know, has almost like 500,000 views. So, you know, we've got some juice, and we have some, we have a fairly good presence. So if our movie were to be kind of, you know, super successful, it would raise awareness for this little movie that never got released. And at some point, the people who own it are going to say, we might be able to exploit this property, this little thing that is sitting on a shelf somewhere, you know, decaying in a negative vault. Let's re-release it. You know, let's put it out on DVD. Let's make it a special feature on a future Fantastic Four release or something. That would be amazing. That would be, you know, holy moly, that would be, if that were to happen, you know, like I felt like if I were to be partly responsible for this, yeah, that would be the golden ring. That would be something that would be amazing. I'd love it to happen, but I don't expect it to.
It'd be cool if it did.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the meantime, you know, you're doing various screenings. In fact, you're going to be doing a screening at American International College.
Yeah, which we'd had all these, you know, like San Diego Comic-Con and the Screen Actors Guild. We just screened at that big theater, the Arrow in LA. All the kind of West Coast stuff, and I want like my people to see it. I want my students to see it. I want my family to see it in a setting where, you know, they can, like a theater, you know?
Right, exactly.
And it's going to be so cool. Yeah, September 25th, 7 o'clock at AIC at the Griswold Theater. Open to the public, no charge. I'll do a Q&A afterwards if anybody has questions. I can't wait, for that screening. That's going to be fun.
Cool, cool. Well, Marty, what you've done is fantastic, and even though you didn't put me in the DVD extras with my story about this, I won't hold that against you.
We were scheduled a couple of times
to
interview you.
I'll tell the folks my story now.
Yes.
Before we let Marty go, which was in 1994, I was at the Video Software Dealers Association convention, the VSDA. There used to be a thing called home video, and there used to be a thing called video stores, and they were on almost every corner of the United States. And so this was the trade show for the home video industry. And as a journalist, I went out there, and it was absolutely a mind-blowing thing because, you know, I believe it was the '94 one, Universal was selling Jurassic Park on home video, and so they had life-size dinosaurs.
Was that a sell-through price when that came out? Was that one you could buy for 20 bucks?
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
And so every studio had these elaborate booths with giveaways to try to convince the mom-and-pop video owners to pre-order so many dozen copies of a title. And it was you could turn left and there was Charlton Heston over there signing autographs, and there's Tony Curtis over here, and there's Michael Jordan over there. It was amazing. Well, Roger Corman didn't...
Michael Jordan, was it Space Jam or something?
No, it was NBA Films.
Oh, okay, cool.
So Roger Corman had no presence on the showroom floor, on the convention floor. He had a party, and I got invited because I was press. And my buddy Steve Bissett, who you know, and who's a great comic book artist, and at that point was working at a video store, he was my +1. So we got into this Corman party. And
was Corman there?
Corman was not there. Steve Railsback was there.
Oh man, Steve Railsback.
Don Stroud was there.
Yep.
And Alex Hyde White,
who played Reed Richards in the movie I did the documentary on.
Right,
so he was
Mr. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And you know, it was sort of interesting. Railsback was very friendly with us. Don Stroud just wanted to hang with us. He felt really comfortable. He didn't have his glass eye in, but Alex Hyde White just like glommed on to us because he had something to say, and what he had to say was how disappointed he was that this film of his was not going to get released.
What month was that in? Do you remember?
I think it was July. Pretty
was
sure.
It 1995 or
94.
Okay.
And he said, and I'll tell you, it was the summer The Mask was released.
The Jim Carrey movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, Cameron Diaz was at the VSDA. I've got a signed picture from her.
I dated her once.
You dated Cameron Diaz? So anyway, you know, he said this could be like The Mask. He said this is a fun family film. If it was released, it could do really well in the summer. And you could tell that he was very seriously upset that this rug had been pulled from underneath him.
Yeah, he did a lot of, he did a lot on his own at a grassroots level to try to get awareness of this movie up as they were, you know, nearing the release, what they thought was going to be the release. He took a lot upon himself, and on his own dime even actively went around promoting this movie coming out because he felt so behind it, because he saw it being this potential breakout for him. So along with Ole, yeah, Alex got screwed too. You know, he's the male lead in this, what could be this, you know, really big little movie.
Well, folks, you need to see this film. Even if you're not a big comic book fan, if you're a mystery fan, you're going to love it because it works on several different levels as a documentary. So the show at American International College is September 24th,
5th,
right?
I think,
25th. There'll certainly be a lot of publicity about that before then, but you need to see it. It's a great film. Marty's done a great job. His partner, Mark Sykes, has done a great job. And thanks so much for coming in.
Oh, man, thank you, Mike. That's great. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
Well, that's another show, and we actually kept it to 30 minutes this time. Imagine that. And I don't have a cigar, and I don't have an alcoholic libation. I'm going to blame Steve Carey for not providing these things to talent. What can I say? Hey, please tune in next time when we're going to be taking a look at entrepreneurship in the city of Springfield with a conversation with Natasha Clark, the founder of the Lioness Group. Until then, let me know how I'm doing. Email me at gmdobbs@comcast.net. Thanks very much.